our perceptions of ourselves and the world are mediated by the way we imagine time, how we explain time, how we use time, and how we fulfill it. Let's start this video with a book recommendation. A Geography of Time by the social psychologist Robert Levine is an eye-opener in many ways and shows largely unknown aspects of a topic that affects all of us all the time. In many cases, the first thing we notice when traveling is a different way of dealing with the phenomenon of time. When we are happy or annoyed by the relaxed nature of people in Southern Europe, when we admire or demonize the calmness of the people on vacation, or when we are amazed at the speed of life in a big city when traveling to London, New York, Hong Kong or Tokyo. We can now consider the topic of time from different angles. In this video, we look at the following perspectives. On the macro level, we want to find out what it means when a society orients itself towards the past, the present, or the future. On the micro level, we look at time in the categories of event time and clock time, and on another micro level, we look at the cultural dimension and the concrete handling of time. Do people tend to follow what is called a monochronic or a polychronic understanding of time? Let us first come to the macro level. In example, orientation towards the past, the present, and the future. Some cultures tend to be primarily oriented towards the past, which means that traditions are considered very important and decisions and actions are made on the basis of experiences. Perhaps people even refer to the knowledge of their ancestors. Traditions are preserved, traditions are maintained, and the rich cultural heritage fills people with pride. Cultures that are primarily oriented towards the present tend to live in a timeless way. The past and the future have little influence on how people in these cultures feel in the present. The focus is on the here and now. Some cultures also get their orientation from focusing on the future. They keep the future in focus and try to plan it as much as possible and to influence it, if possible, positively. Development, progress, inventions and innovations are just as much in focus as future opportunities and possibilities. The design of plans and strategies, the formulation of intermediate goals and objectives determine present and future behavior. People learn and work now in order to be happy in the future. Cultures can certainly orient themselves towards one time or another. Of course, the importance of the past, present and future is weighted differently. In the Middle East and particularly in Israel, the past plays a doubly important role. On the one hand, the extermination of the Jews of Europe and the Holocaust are significant for the founding and the self-image of the State of Israel. On the other hand, there is a pronounced devotion to living in the moment and the here and now, while the development of future technologies also plays a prominent role. In some cultures and contexts, the times overlap. The case of Indonesia presents a very different picture, where the present is given the highest importance. The past influences the present, but the future is decoupled from the present. Let us first discuss a few facts about the development of time. The use of time for orientation and segmentation of time in our society is so ubiquitous that we can hardly imagine life without a clock. However, it was only at the end of the 17th century that a more precise measurement of time became possible. The earlier pocket watches, which were often carried in the trouser pocket on a thin chain, were more of a fashion item because their accuracy was not sufficient to agree on an exact quarter or half an hour. Time was also measured in very different ways. Provinces and administrative districts and even neighboring cities used different methods to determine time. In 1860, for example, there were more than 70 different time zones in the United States of America alone. And, for example, the phenomenon traveling back in time when traveling by train from one city to another that lay in a different time zone. Until the 19th century, mechanical time was considered a poor imitation of time as measured by nature. Before industrialization, timekeeping was based on requirements of nature. Appointments usually took place at sunrise. Nature determined when to plant, to work, to harvest and rest. Human time also served as a benchmark, which is why there are still phrases and time specifications in some languages today, such as long as it takes to cook rice. An example, around 30 minutes, or as long as it takes to roast rice, less than 15 minutes. In modern societies, we start to get used to temporal rhythms at a very young age. For example, a 3-hour frequency for breastfeeding of babies is considered an ideal. School children keep track of how long they need to get dressed and to go to school in order to calculate how early they need to set their alarms. The fact that successful socialization of children in terms of time is crucial for later academic, social and professional success was also evident among the Bedouins of the Negev desert, whose children grow up in an event time which is determined by natural events such as sunrise, sunset, new moon or full moon. At the Ben Gurion University of Negev, Ebrahim Ben Baruch and Sipora Melitz therefore developed a training program for Bedouin children to help them get used to the majority culture. In it, they cover the following topics, which you mostly take for granted, I guess. Differentiation between past, present and future. Day and night, morning, moon, evening and the sequence of activities. Weekdays and their events. Concept of duration, example, how long does it take to tie your shoes? Concept of simultaneity and the sequence of events. Cyclical time, linear time, and the fact that time is limited. This brings us to the micro level. Punctuality is probably one of the best known aspects of the cultural dimension of time, and the first thought when it comes to how Germans deal with time. You can find a video from the Goethe Institute on how Germans deal with time in the links in the appendix of this video. Here again, it is not about cultures that have either a so-called monochronic or a polychronic understanding of time, but rather about tendencies in cultures. So it's not about pigeonholing or two opposing sides, but rather about an orientation on dimensions which with extreme values. Right? In cultures with a monochronic understanding of time, in which punctuality and concentration on one thing at a time are seen, we will certainly find people who multitask and tend to be unpunctual. Right? Also exists. Likewise, in cultures with a tendency towards a polychronic understanding of time, we will find people who place great value on punctuality and and focus on a particular thing at a particular time. So it is not a question of either or, but more a both and with an orientation towards the one or the other side. Perhaps the following illustration can help us better understand the ideal in cultures with a tendency towards monochronic understanding of time. We see the work to be done on the left, a list of tasks to be ticked off in the middle, and the work that has been done on the right. A more monochronic understanding of time is expressed in a preference for focusing on one activity at a time. One thing is done at one time. Punctuality is considered an ideal, and an appointment made should be kept. Planning is often done in advance, which is why commitment is highly valued. Precision and security are valued. In Mexico or among Latinos, people like to talk about the hora anglesia. Example, in translation, the American clock, or the US American clock. That is in differentiation of Mexican Americans, of course. Afro-Americans also talk about the white people's time, right? Overall, monochronic systems tend to underestimate the emotional needs of their members. Let's look at the other extreme, namely the polychronic understanding of time. Polychronic means that several things can be done at once. You work on everything at the same time. We can also see this in our illustration, where a person with 5 arms does practically everything at the same time. Making phone calls, writing, drinking coffee, everything can happen at the same time. Above all, people in polychronic cultures are usually always and at any time willing to communicate with other people and maintain relationships. The time is merely a reference point, and plans can be changed easily. Flexibility and willingness to take risks are part of life. In South America and among Latinos, people talk about the hora mexicana, right? The hora mexicana, or the hora brasileira. In translation, Mexican or Brazilian time. And among African Americans, they talk about the colored people's time, CPT. If you arrive on time for an invitation in Mexico, your hosts may ask you if you're coming to clean or to help cleaning. The focus in cultures with a more polychronic understanding of time is a strong relationship with other people and the satisfaction of emotional needs. However, polychronic systems also have a tendency to sink into unproductive chaos. Now, we have looked at 3 different approaches to this very important topic. Are societies oriented towards the past, the present, and/or the future? How much do we orient ourselves towards the time of events, and how much towards the clock time and the differences between polychronic and monochronic understanding of time? On YouTube, I encourage you to leave your remarks in the comments and to like and of course to subscribe. Hit the bell to make sure that you frequently get new videos into your inbox. Thank you for your valued cooperation and feedback on the seminar and on the online learning platforms.